Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Nightreign talk. Today I want to discuss what's coming for the game, the details that we actually do know, what could be, and what we're also hoping to see. We know there's new content coming to the game in the form of updates, even as soon as this very month, but also we've always had that DLC confirmation before it even released, and we know that it's planned for Q4 of this year. So let's start this video out with what we do actually know. While there were smaller sources of information, it was the tweet that was celebrating the amount of sales that the game's received. In response to that tweet, they posted on their own social media this: in addition to the DLC releasing later this year, new additions will be gradually implemented, including enhanced fights against existing Nightlords starting this month, as well as duo expeditions at a later date. So at very least, in terms of known updates, we know we're getting duos, and we know we're getting harder Nightlords. In terms of duos then, we can expect a reduction in terms of enemy health, potential damage that they deal, and likely, like we saw with solo mode, an increase to the amount of runes that you generate in duos compared to trios. Do I think you're going to get those auto self-revives when facing the Nightlord that you do in solo mode now? Probably not, since you'll be able to revive each other, but maybe they'll introduce some kind of forgiveness or helpful mechanic to consider the fact there's 2 of you versus 3 of you. At very least, it seems like it will not be coming this month in June though. On the other end, we have the harder Nightlords, enhanced fights against existing Nightlords, and then starting this month. So at very least, in a matter of weeks from now, sometime June, we're going to get these harder fights, and that should breathe some interest in the game again. What are they going to do to enhance those fights? Like, you could have 2 phases for all the Nightlords, except for Holster, the final one, where maybe that's got 3. It could very well be that they're just going to add a bunch of new mechanics. So new movesets, new combos, differences in the AI patterns, rather than a full-on new phase. Since we have very little information about that, it's very hard to say for sure. In my opinion, the majority of these fights don't have a lot of mechanics to them, due to the fact that there's 3 people fighting it and they want to focus more on AoE, and also the fact that you've taken 30 to 40 minutes to reach it. So, you know, the mechanics can't be overly brutal to allow for the journey that took you to even reach the thing. Maybe you'll need to defeat the bosses the first time to unlock the harder version of them, and then you're going into that willingly, knowingly. And that could allow them to do some harder stuff, or maybe these extra phases. So hopefully soon we'll learn more about them. In regards to the whole DLC thing, in that tweet they said that the DLC will be releasing later this year, and we already expected this to mean Q4, so very late in the year. We knew the DLC would be coming before this tweet because originally on the Steam page, it told us a very limited plan for it. Planning DLC for the future, it said additional playable characters and bosses will be in that. But since then, that description has been removed. But still, I mean, it makes complete sense. Extra Nightfarers and extra Nightlords. I remember just before the game came out, on the official page you could look at the Nightfarers and the Revenant wasn't actually in the list, but if you assume she was there was these awkward 2 empty slots just to the right, which would suggest then that we're going to be getting a planned 2 more Nightfarers at the minimum. But maybe we'll get more than that, that'd be great. In regards to the new Nightlords, it's hard to say how many they would do. Obviously there's a slot for 2 more in regards to 10 versus 8, but I wouldn't be happy with only 2 new additions. Personally, I'd be looking for something like 8 extra Nightlords, doubling up the roster, breathing a lot more life into the game. These updates do need to be good, but ultimately because they're reworking assets in the way that they are, I do think it's hopeful and possible that we get more than normal, even though it's a shorter time between these releases. We'll have to see. But yeah, that's everything we know. Let's now talk about some hopeful changes to come in updates before the DLC. Things that would actually be reasonable to hope for, whether that's number tweaks and changes to the current game as we know it, rather than new content that have to actively develop. One of the most obvious changes that I expect to see in updates is going to be rebalance. An example of that will be Revenant here, and her kind of weird scaling, where she has S scaling in Faith, but B scaling in Intelligence. Then you've got Recluse, who has S scaling in Faith and S scaling in Intelligence. In my opinion, Revenant should be the Faith character, Recluse should be the Intelligence character, and they both should receive more help to achieve those things in a consistent manner. There's simply too much RNG in runs where you're playing Revenant that you just don't get the Faith setup that you're going to need, where Recluse can always find anything for Faith or Intelligence and it'll just work out. So I think Revenant needs a little bit more love. Some rebalancing around the scaling could help that. Revenant herself should start with at least 1 better offensive incantation, in my opinion. I've seen calls for Discus of Light, though that seems like it'd be very strong. She needs some kind of reliable, spammable starter offensive incantation, in my opinion. I'd also like to see improvement to her passive. The one that will, spawn in an extra ally if you land the killing blow. Sometimes when you're in trios, you just can't get that last hit. If you're not coordinating with your team, it just doesn't happen naturally. So adding a kind of few minutes of cooldown to provide a guaranteed trigger of that whenever an enemy dies, even if you didn't get the last hit, could also help. To talk about someone else, I'd also like to see changes for Executor, specifically for his cursed sword, which currently is in a weak state. Don't get me wrong, the parrying feels great, it's very fun to do, and obviously that parry timing is really forgiving. And he's a strong class in regards to his S scaling dexterity and S in Arcane. But the problem is his weapon skill cursed sword. A lot of players don't even use the thing because it's not encouraged or rewarded enough. I think there's a lot of value in breaking the stance of the target, tanking it, parrying so you're not moving so your allies can hit it, but I want to see more value in the cursed sword itself. Maybe it should take on whatever benefits the main weapon you have in your first slot actually has. So if that has poison, the cursed sword should take on poison. Something like that could be interesting. If that's too mechanically difficult to implement, then something more boring but effective would be the buff that you get when you charge it up. This unlocks the special attack and not much else. It certainly feels like it should give you increased damage while that buff's going. Maybe that's intended, but it's definitely not good enough in its current state. So maybe you could make it so once it's charged up, it's got noticeably increased poise damage, if not just raw damage behind it. To encourage you to actually try to parry to get the buff because it's so good, maybe you put that buff on a more aggressive timer so it runs out sooner to balance that. Whatever it is, the cursed sword doesn't feel good enough. For other classes and what's weaker, I think there's a lot of debate around the whole Raider. Some people rate him really high. Personally, I'm not a massive fan of his current state, but by no means is he a bad class. Nor do I think Guardian is a bad class, but these are definitely two that are up for debate a lot in regards to issues they have. Guardian suffers from a lack of DPS. When you directly compare him to Wilder, you can see the scaling is literally worse than the same thing. It's basically the same class, focused on quality, but with noticeably worse scaling. So maybe they could slightly enhance his scaling with Dex to B and B for strength and Dex, or make some more mechanical changes, like his Steel Guard passive. Maybe give it a full 360 protection from all sides when used. Maybe increase the speed of his weapon skill, the Whirlwind, so it's easier to apply and use. Obviously, around rebalancing, there's a lot of items that are underused, as well as weapons, incants, and spells. I think it's reasonable to assume that they can look at the stats of what players actually use, maybe what they're offered and what gets left or ignored when offered, and then take those really underused things and buff them up. I like with Nightreign that we can stand out from Elden Ring and the balancing. Really shift things up. Go harder on that. It'd be fun. Absolute last thing I want to mention for rebalancing is status with Sleep and Madness and how they need some updatable attention. Sleep should be better. Right now, you proc it after a lot of effort and then it gets instantly broken. Any other damage goes in. I think that's terrible. It really should just last a set time, maybe a few seconds, like a hard stun, and it should just work much more reliably. On that note, Madness isn't like a terrible concept, but we barely get to test or play with it because it's so unbelievably rare for some reason. Madness tag camps should have a 100% chance to offer you at a minimum two, Madness related items. Even if the pool of Madness tools, weapons and such is small, we should always be able to get a Madness something from a Madness camp. And most of the time, I clear Madness camps and don't get offered a Madness anything. That's stupid. Right, let's speed this up, blast some stuff. First up, Shifting Earth, we can all agree, is quite damn rare, is a bit too rare. Two ways you could go for that is just make Shifting Earth in general with RNG way more common. Or it'd be cool if we had some sort of feature to choose what Shifting Earth we'd like to target, so the next time we get one, it's that one. I've literally never done the volcanic one since day one of play. Why? I've also complained in the past about invasion events. They can spawn as the circle is closing, which can often be run ending. The Locust event when you're mid-blue is a nightmare, steals runes and such. You can't go into the blue and tank enough to kill them off. It's a problem. The Libra Curse can't be cleansed since he despawns in the blue, so now you've got half your normal health for the rest of the run, and you didn't even get a chance. These things shouldn't be possible. I've also seen requests for some protection for 3-bar down targets. I don't know, man. If someone gets downed 3 times, they should be very hard to res and basically dead. I think that's fair enough. But I do dislike the fact that you might spend a while, working on bringing that person up, then the boss targets you or whatever, you get out of there, and then you come back and all the progress has been reset. That feels terrible. I've seen good suggestions like a 1-bar protection, so if you get through the first bar and then have to run away for a while, it'll only ever refill to 2 bars once you've cleared that 3rd bar the first time for the revive. It's also quite weird the targeting for down players is quite unreliable, especially if you have a smaller weapon like a Duchess with daggers. That's a prime example. There's a lot of whiffing going on, so maybe that could be improved. Bigger hitbox on a down target or something. It's probably too hopeful for updates compared to DLC, but I do want to see more fan favorite boss fights. I don't know why we've got stuff like Gaping Dragon over Ornstein and Smo, Artorias, Sif would be amazing. You know, the most popular bosses. Where are they? I've also seen a lot of requests for more variety in the flow of the game. The castle is always too good, everything else feels like not as good. So more RNG in all of this, like maybe one camp is worth triple the runes for some reason and there's an icon to show that. Maybe the wandering bosses show up in some strange places more. Address the flow of the game, change it up. But for when things go bad, of course, quick reset buttons and a group option to reset or end the run. People have been asking for this a lot. If you're in solo mode, there should just be a button to say, restart the run. If you're in group and you want to reset or end the run, there should be some sort of voting menu, and if everyone votes to do it, it should happen. This seems simple to me. Hopefully it's doable. I've also seen requests for a pause feature in solo runs. This is more debatable, you know, in a Souls game, a pause is harder to achieve, but this is Nightreign, not a Souls game. Obviously, you have to be very locked in for half an hour or longer. It's GG if something in life takes you away from the game. It is what it is in group version online, but in solo, I don't think a pause would be that big a deal. I've also seen cool requests for, you know how we can RNG just pick from a list of Nightlords and randomly roll one of them? It'd be cool if we could do that with the Nightfarers too. So you select a bunch of them or all of them, and then you just get given one of the Nightfarers. At least a bit more variety in a mechanic like that. In regards to bigger changes that would affect the life of the game, it'd be things like the dormant power passives and them getting an overhaul. Obviously, there's a lot of boring percent increases compared to interesting roguelike powers and benefits, like the passives you get for, say, walking and triggering an effect. They've not been nearly ambitious enough for this stuff. It's a bit bland. Add more weird and interesting stuff to make each run feel different. Lastly, for updates, I'd love to see them address relics in some way. Right now we have the Scenic Flatstone, and this is your RNG spawner of a relic. But the system for going through this process is a bit weird. Like right now I have a load of dead relics, don't I, that I could turn into Merc. But here I am at the Jar Bazaar, completely unable to do that. Instead, I gotta go to the relic rights. Then I gotta come to the sell menu, where I'm looking at the Jar Bazaar anyway. Why am I trading here? Why can't I do it with the Jar Bazaar as well? Seems obvious. Some sort of improvement to the relic system in general would be great though, like a crafting system, although that might be more DLC related. But it would be great if we had better filters for what we're looking for. Right now it's very basic, and if you didn't realize you can select effect and at least do a bit more specific stuff like this, it's something, but I would like greater details. I'd love to be able to type in the exact phrasing of a passive that I'm looking for. That'd be much better. But obviously a relic overhaul in general to make them more interesting would be great, but it's probably asking for too much. In regards to the DLC, I think it's too big of a topic to fairly say specifics. Obviously I've got a lot of update stuff that I'd like to see, but for DLC, I just want fresh and new content. So they're adding more Nightfarers. I want a bigger variety of main themes. So how about a Pyromancer? Or any of the other subcategories of magic and incantation that we could really lean into. Let's get a dragon form humanoid in. Let's get some silly characters with weird passives and benefits that can absolutely screw you with RNG or give you a crazy run. Like I said, I'd like them to double the amount of Nightlords, so go from 8 to 16. And I'd like to see Limveld itself change into multiple themes. Elden Ring has so many incredible environments that they can draw from and repurpose. It seems like such a waste that we're always on Limveld. The big super obvious one for the DLC is where is all the Shadow of Erdtree content, all the weapons, all the bosses, all of the stuff from that, incant spells, Ashes of War, inject that into this game. We expect that in the DLC. I think it's going to come, obviously. I do think it's probably unlikely because the game would have launched with it if it was, but I also think a lot of people would appreciate crossplay. You know, a PC player should be able to play with a console player and vice versa. It would only be a good thing for the game to, you know, matchmake better. But it's obviously a very complex thing, not easy to implement in your game. But it is requested a lot. But yeah, for now, I'm going to leave it there. What would you guys like to see in updates before the DLC? And then yes, bigger expectations for the DLC that could actually have dev time, something fresh that would help the game. What are you looking for? Let me know your thoughts, and hopefully soon we get more information about the updates, especially this June one. Until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.